Last minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning ride is okay.
And staying in front of the day isn't always as simple as 1, 2, 3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
what's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
Let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
You're listening to the Peak Physique Podcast with Andre Adams on the NASM Podcast Network.
Hey guys, welcome back to another exciting episode of the NASM Peak Physique Podcast. I'm your host, Andre Adams, NASM Master Trainer and IFBB Physique Olympian. Today, we're going to break down how to design a double progression program. You may or may not have heard about this concept, but it's a strategy that we oftentimes use in different sports, but especially in bodybuilding, to force an adaptation over time. So that double progression training program really focuses on two main goals over time, and that's increasing volume. So that could be reps, could be duration, could be sets, and then also the intensity, right? That's going to be our weight or our resistance. The primary concept is to gradually progress in either reps or load, helping athletes make steady gains in strength, hypertrophy, endurance, etc., depending on what their main training focus is. With that, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to dive right in. Here's how you can design a double progression training program. First, we're going to select the exercise modalities. And again, this is going to be hyper-specific to the individual based on their unique goals and fitness experience. So first, we're going to choose the exercises based on their goals. For example, this could be close kinetic chain, compound movements such as a squat, a deadlift, a leg press, or it could be things like, more isolated work. But when we're talking specific to those close kinetic chain compounds, generally we're looking at strength or hypertrophy. If we go to something like isolation movements, that's more targeted muscle growth, especially for something like physique and bodybuilding. So that's how we're going to initially choose the exercise modalities. And this can evolve and change over time. Obviously, it's still good to have some different progressions and also a variety of exercises and modalities over time. Step 2, we're going to determine the starting weight and reps. And I know this is one that I often get these questions from my own athletes is, all right, coach, you programmed in 8 to 12 reps for 3 to 5 sets of this exercise. What's an appropriate weight for me to start with? And just high level general rule of thumb is going to be, if you're in a specified rep range for hypertrophy, 8 to 12 reps, choose an appropriate weight once you get warmed up that you can handle your full amount somewhere in that rep range, but full range of motion, pain-free, without compensations. If you can check those 3 boxes, you're doing pretty well. If you get to the end of that rep range and you feel like you got 10 more reps, it's time to progress the weight a little bit, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about that and how to continue to monitor and assess the appropriate weights if you're training on your own and you don't have a trainer. For strength, typically we're going to focus on the lower rep ranges. So this is where the NASM OPT model comes into play, right? If we're looking at, let's say phase 4, max strength, right? Or we're phase 3, we're hypertrophy. We're phase 2, we're strength endurance. These are going to really dictate some of those acute variables and rep and set ranges that we're looking at. So again, for strength, we're generally focusing on lower rep ranges, let's say 3 to 5 reps per set, lower volumes, heavier loads. For hypertrophy or muscular development, we're aiming for the moderate rep ranges. And again, there's some variability in here depending on the exercise, but in general, we're going to do most of our work in that 6 to 12 rep range per set. And then for endurance, we're looking at the higher rep ranges. That's going to be those 12 to 20, sometimes even 25 reps, depending on what the exercise modality is. So that's where we're determining starting weight, appropriate amount of reps based on what particular phase that we're training in. Step 3, double progression components. All right, so let's break this down a little bit further. Those progressions by reps. So when we think about the first variable that I would usually employ We're going to start with a certain weight and rep range. So let's just say a given exercise, we'll make the math easy. We're doing 100 pounds and we're doing that for a specified rep range of 8 to 12 reps, right? Initially, we might be able to do that 100-pound load for 8 reps. And over subsequent weeks, as we get stronger, our work capacity increases. We're up to 10 or maybe even 12 reps. And we can begin to progress further if we needed to by adding more reps or sets, right? So that's a progression by volume. Now, that being said, once we hit the upper end of that rep range, I would normally choose to then do a double progression by weight, right? So once the weight is increased, now we can go back to the lower end of the rep cycle, that rep range. Let's say we were in the 8 to 12 range. We're now easily doing 12 reps with that weight. We're going to up the weight to 110 pounds and come back down to 8 reps until we build enough work capacity to then do 10 and eventually 12 reps at that working weight as well. And so there you can kind of see how that double progression comes into play, where we're leveraging reps and then ultimately weight, and we're continuing to repeat that cycle over time. Guys, if you're just joining us, welcome back to another exciting episode of the NASM Peak Physique Podcast. We are breaking down how to design a double progression training program. This is one of my favorite concepts. Some of you guys might be doing this already and not realize it. And there's even more complex, advanced ways of doing this. You can do a triple progression, but we're going to keep it simple today and focus on those double progressions. So we went through the first 3 phases, and now we're going to go to step number 4, which is really how to set up that training cycle. What does it look like? Let's take weeks 1 and 2, right? We're going to start with a given weight and a given rep range. So we've identified what the goal is. That goal is going to dictate our working reps and how many sets we're going to do. And we also need to choose the starting weight. So we talked about choosing an appropriate weight that we can hit the lower end of the rep range with. That gives us space to grow and progress the reps over time. Now, weeks 3 and 4, we're going to aim to hit the top end of that rep range for all working sets. So, you might come out and feel amazing the first 1 or 2 sets, and you're able to hit 12 reps with that 100 pounds, but you notice you start to fade by sets 3 and 4. In that scenario, we're going to wait a little bit longer until you're able to execute 12 reps times all 4 sets before progressing the weight again. So week 5, we've now been able to achieve the upper end of the rep range. We're hitting the full amount of volume and weight. And now it's time to increase the weight slightly and drop back down to the lower end of that rep range, right? So now week 6 and beyond, we're going to continue to repeat this cycle as needed. If you're working with a coach or a trainer, this is something that they would obviously help assess on a weekly basis and progress over time. Otherwise, I do recommend, if you're doing this yourself, try to log and, really keep track of the weights, sets, and reps that you're doing from week to week, and that's going to help give you a very clear idea of when it's time to progress and by how much. The next thing we'll talk about is step 5. That's going to be really the rest periods and frequency. I like to adjust rest periods based on the client's specific goals. So if we're looking at a strength goal and we're really trying to maximize how much weight we're able to push, we're going to be taking those longer rests, right? That can be 2 to 3 minutes between sets. If it's powerlifting, that's going to be as much as 3 to 5 minutes between sets for maximal recovery. Versus a hypertrophy goal, phase 3, that's going to be moderate rest. Generally speaking, we're in that 60 to 90 seconds rest. We're trying to maintain as much time under tension as possible and really keeping, again, a moderate amount of rest. So partial recovery, but we're really trying to stimulate blood flow and maximize hypertrophy in that phase. Another one would be endurance, right? So that's going to be phase 2 of our OPT model. Those are generally going to be shorter rest periods, 30 to 60 seconds, sometimes 0 to 30 seconds. And in relating this to bodybuilding terms, this would really focus on muscular endurance and what I would call muscular conditioning, right? When we're really trying to achieve that hard conditioned look, especially, towards the tail end of a prep, you're going to want to start to phase in some endurance. But this could also be used early on in prep when you're really trying to build that foundation of muscle and bring up your work capacity to handle the greater demands and greater loads of subsequent training phases in prep. Now that we've laid out, those 5 key steps in establishing your double progression program, let's give an example program. And I'm going to break this down for more of a beginner to intermediate. And the focus here is going to be hypertrophy. So let's take weeks 1 and 2. I'm going to use squats for this one because everyone should be squatting in some form or fashion. Maybe it's a leg press, but we need to train those legs and glutes. So let's go weeks 1 and 2 here. Squat is the exercise. I'm going to go barbell back squats. And let's say we're doing 3 sets of, and we're looking for 8 to 12 reps here, right? Hypertrophy. We're going to do 3 sets of 8 reps with 100 pounds. So we're going to try and maintain that 8 reps for all 3 sets in weeks 1 and 2. Weeks 3 and 4, I'm going to progressively overload the weight. We're going to go 105 pounds. So now we will try to maintain our reps and our sets, 3 sets of 8 reps at 105 pounds. And we're starting to get that adaptation as the muscles adapt to this stimulus. We start to build more muscle, increase our work capacity. Now, let's just say weeks 5 or weeks 4 through 6, maybe that's a better range. We're going to try and increase either our reps, our weight, or maybe both, right? We can do a double progression. So let's say week 6, I'm going to go 110 pounds and see if I'm able to do any additional reps. Maybe by now you've built enough muscle and you can hit 10 or even 12 reps. But by adding this additional weight, more than likely it's going to cause you to lower the rep volume, right? So now you might be back down into this 6 to 8 rep range for a couple of weeks as your body adapts. And then over time, again, weeks 3 and 4, weeks 5 and 6, we're going to try and hold that 110 pound weight and maximize our reps for all 3 sets. So, we eventually should get to 12 reps for 3 sets, maybe even a 4th set. Now, you could do a triple progression here. So you want to get fancy. We've done a double progression on reps and weight. We could add more variables in, such as a rest pause set, right? Where we're resting for 15 seconds or less, maintaining a constant weight, going right back to work, trying to get an additional 3 to 5 reps out of it. And we would do that for about 3 times in a row. Or another good triple progression in this scenario could be a drop set, where we're keeping the reps relatively constant, but we're reducing the weight over 3 intervals, right? So there's different strategies that can be employed to progress a progression, right? So you can get as colorful, as complex with this as you want, but start by trying a basic double progression, increase the weight, increase the reps, and then we're going to repeat that cycle every 5 to 6 weeks. All right, some key points that I want you guys to take home on designing your own double progressions is making sure to, again, track your progress. And if you're an experienced lifter, you've been doing this for many years, maybe it's right up here, right? It's in your head and you kind of know where your reps are with a given weight on a given exercise. But for those of you that are relatively novice, maybe training on your own, or even for you trainers that are training clients, if you've got a lot of clients, it's really, really hard to remember what every client's doing. Journal it, log it, and that way you're able to keep track of the weight and reps and make sure that you're getting the most out of this double progression and you're, thinking about where you're going over the next 2 to 4 weeks. Another thing that I want you guys to take home is recovery. So ensuring adequate rest and recovery, this is going to help facilitate muscle growth, MPS, right? That's your muscle protein synthesis and strength development. So the better we can get the body, the muscles recovered, deload that central nervous system, that's going to definitely boost your results in the gym. You don't want to train so hard with these double progressions that you're not allowing adequate recovery time and you're starting to approach burnout where you actually get, it's counterproductive. You get diminishing returns. So make sure that you're getting adequate sleep, hydration, and nutrition, especially around your workout and on your heavy training days. And the last thing that I want you guys to be thinking about as we're talking about key points on double progressions is don't forget about undulating periodization. So this is what I love about programming, is that you get to be creative with this, right? Now, when I think about undulating periodization as it relates to this topic, we're able to vary the rep ranges, the intensity, and really avoid plateaus. And what I mean by this is, if we let's just take a 12-week transformation client, right? Or a 12-week contest prep client. We're going to break it down into month 1, month 2, and month 3, where month 1 could be double progression, but that double progression is written around the framework of endurance and conditioning. So phase 2 of the OPT model. Month 2, double progression, written around the framework of phase 3, hypertrophy, where we're really maximizing muscular development. And then month 3 could be a double progression where we're starting to mix in some phase 4, maybe some max strength, and really hold the muscle fullness and get that hardness and keep the muscle size that we're looking for towards the end of a prep. So those are ways to leverage double progressions, but also still focus on undulating periodization over the course of that 12 weeks. And the one thing that I'll leave you guys with here about double progressions is they are very adaptable, right? So it's highly adaptable. You can tweak this depending on the client's specific goals. You can tweak it whether you're focusing on strength, hypertrophy, endurance, or whatever the case may be. But this is a concept that I want you guys to keep in your back pocket. Try it out on yourself, try it out on your clients, and get the most out of those training programs. Guys, if you have any questions, any topics you'd like to hear directly from me, or maybe you want me to do a deep dive on something we've already covered, you can reach out to me direct online at andreadamsofficial.com or teamadamsprep.com. You can email me at trainingbydre@gmail.com or find me on YouTube and Instagram at andreadams_official. Thanks as always for tuning in to another episode of the Peak Physique Podcast. We'll see you guys next time.